Classics here, welcome back to another video. I'm here again with Mark, who you may remember talked to you around his lovely Esprit in the last video. I want to say from both of us, thank you so much for the views and the likes and the comments you've had on that video. It means the world to me and to everyone who subscribed. That really is amazing, so thanks for that. This video is predominantly going to be answering a lot of the questions that you guys had after that video about Mark's car, my car, and his journey to his car turning out like it is now. We thought it'd be best to do it in a video rather than reply and try and cram it all in comments. So that's what this video is going to be. I hope you enjoy it. Hey guys, just letting you know very briefly, we actually filmed too much content to put in one video unless you want to watch a half an hour to 45-minute long video, so I've decided to put it into two videos. This first one is going to be more about Mark's backstory and the cars he's had and what's led him to settling on a S2 Esprit and what was the sort of thoughts behind him turning that into a Restomod. The second video is going to be categorically answering all of your questions that you left on the video. So just let you know, hope you enjoy both the videos. So the first question I've got for you, Mark, is I know that you've owned previous Lotus cars before, quite a few of them. What sort of made you buy Lotus cars and what's made you go from the ones you've had before settle on the Esprit that you've got now?
Well, that's a really good question, and I bought my first Lotus, which was an Elan and an M100 in 1998, and I went to a dealership to buy a Fiat Barchetta because I was of an age where I wanted a soft top, two-seater, and I was looking around, and I actually said to the guy when I was looking at the Lotus, because it was a joint dealership, I asked him which country manufactured Lotus, whether it was an Italian manufacturer. So that's where I was initially. I've owned 10 Lotus over the years, with my latest Esprit being my most recent. I've owned a GT3 Esprit, as well as a couple of Evoras and the usual Elise Europrint things. So I feel like I have a good understanding of the brand and the dynamics of the car. What I love is British. The philosophy of performance through lightweight. So instead of taking a heavy car and putting a very powerful engine in it, they've worked the other way, and I think that's intelligent, and I like that. I like the efficiency that comes with that. I guess the problem that I've had is when you buy a Lotus, it's really hard to get another type of car because you're so used to a certain type of handling and performance, and it's really the kind of road holding that I just struggle to find in anything else. And every time, certainly in the earlier days, I thought of moving on, I just came back to Lotus again. And in terms of the reason why I now own a classic, albeit modified Esprit Lotus, is that I've just had my previous two cars were Evoras. I had a 2010 Evora and a 2014 Evora. Wonderful cars. I've got, in every conceivable way, but I felt that I was chasing the latest Lotus every time. And so I decided that just to get off that particular sort of treadmill, I would buy a car that I would never replace again as my sports car. The Giugiaro Esprit is, for me, an iconic classic style. It is. It's not the James Bond thing. Otherwise, I'd have got an S1. It is just the fact that I think if you ask an 8-year-old to draw a sports car in profile, they draw this car. It is absolutely stunning, and I decided that was, if I'm going to have one car for the rest of my life, it's going to be an early Lotus Esprit, and I wanted to be able to drive it because I did not want a car that I could not use, and so that's why I restored and modified it. Hence the walk around that we did the last video. Right.
Okay. And as far as other brands of sports cars, did you try other brands before you tried Lotus? And what, apart from the lightness and the handling and the fact that it was British?
Honestly, I mean, I can't say as I have, to be fair. At the time, I was looking at things like, Barchetta, because that was where I was. The MX-5 was, everyone was talking about, the wild days of the, I think the Mark II had just come out. And those are the sorts of cars that, and I knew nothing really about the cars in the back in those days. I'd come out of Rovers. That's where I was coming from. I had a Rover 200. So I haven't really. I mean, I've always lusted quietly after a McLaren 12C. But again, would that be dynamically any better than an Evora, which is where I was at the time? And I've never had a particular desire. I mean, where does Lotus sit in the marketplace? Is it a McLaren competitor? Is it a Porsche competitor? Where it's a really hard mark, I think, to peg against others. Now, you could argue it's a Porsche competitor, and maybe it is actually.
Just pushing for that now, aren't they, to try and compete with Porsche?
Yeah, but could you really pitch an Evora against a 911 or a Cayman? Cayman and Evora, well, they're two different cars. 911 and Evora, well, they're two different levels, I think. So I've never really felt any, when I was younger, I did try to look at other cars, an MGFs, those sorts of things. So I was looking at sports cars. I've always been a bit of a sports car guy when I was younger. That's all I could afford. And now, if for some reason I had lots of money and I couldn't afford an Evija, I'd probably look at a second-hand McLaren. But again, I'm happy. I'm so content with the brand, with what it stands for, that I don't feel the need.
Yeah. Okay. So, as far as now you've got your car and you've done what you want to do with your car, is there anything else you'd like to do to it?
Well, that's a good question. So I've just had a big debate with Nick at Tomorrow's Classics about power assisted steering, because the steering is quite heavy. And there are two reasons for that. One is, I suspect you'll find at parking speeds, the steering is quite heavy. And of course, I've got wider wheels. I'm sure we'll come back to the wheels at the front, and that makes it, a little bit heavier. And when I'm in car parks, so when I'm going to Aldi to do my shop, or I'm going to the tip, which is what I use the car for, at parking speed, it can be quite heavy. And so I had a big debate with Nick, and we decided in the end that the better thing to do would be to take out the steering column and to refurbish it, replace the universal joints, which are one of them's a little bit notchy at the moment, and just improve it, create some gaiters around them, because actually there's a lot of, if you drive it in the winter, there's no protection under the front. There's no sill underneath the front of the car. So I'm not going to do that. I've just done the front lights with the sandwiched printed circuit board pre-LED lights, which again, they're controversial, but I'm very happy with them. I am still debating whether to electrify the car. Not now, but once solid state batteries come in, so you get better performance for lighter weight. Once the whole tech has moved on and has improved, and if you can mount the motor with a bespoke collar to the Citroen gearbox, because the drives obviously come straight out the gearbox, I think that could be an option towards the end of the decade. Is kind of what I'm thinking. Other than that, I think I'm pretty much there now. The car is in the garage right now, that's why it's not here today. And we're doing a few things to it, some maintenance, some minor upgrades. I'm replacing the sun visors with acrylic tinted sort of see-through sun visors because I want to, and a few other minor things. But I think I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, it's as far as, like you said, you use your car for shopping and going to the tip and other adventures, and you've got the luxury now, after doing all the work that you want to do to it, to just say, I want to go. Like, my dream is to take this over to Hethel, to where it was born. But for me to do that, the car has to be running perfectly, as that is a big trip. For us, the car has to be running perfectly, have no mechanical issues. It's a trip I'd have to plan for weeks in advance. The weather would have to be right, because it very rarely goes out in the rain. And a few people were saying that keeping them original and not doing a restoration, a full restoration, not resto mod, but a restoration, isn't necessarily the best thing. Keeping them original is, the way to go, which I tend to lean towards, but I do sort of crave the ease of, like you do, hopping in your car and going down to, Silverstone or Hethel or wherever the hell you want to go. That's one thing I do miss. And is it best to have my car, tucked up in the garage, waiting for work to be done, or waiting for the perfect day or the perfect trip, or to have one like yours where you're going to see it out and about? Like I'm always driving through the town where we live, and I always see you out in your car and give you a wave and you flash your lights. But mine is
I often don't know it's you.
Yeah, exactly, because I'm not in this. Yeah. I'm in my daily car. So that's the thing. Is it best to have them out on the road, or to have them cooped up in the garage, waiting for that perfect opportunity? That's why I would sort of fight your argument, really, where I don't agree with all the modifications that you've done, but the fact that you can use your car a hell of a lot more than I can use mine is brilliant for Lotus, for the car, for you, and for everyone else who gets to see them around. I think that's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this is the perennial discussion, argument about whether you modify. Yeah. And I don't like the word modify. I prefer Restomod to mean restored and modernised. Yeah. So that's kind of the way I interpret it. Yeah. Technically, it's modified, but I have modernised my car, in my belief. Yes, there are some aesthetics, of course, that people will choose to like or not. But this is the argument. It's about whether you stay factory fresh, or whether you try and keep the car, as in update the car to survive and manage, perhaps on modern roads. But I think it's a bit of a fallacy, to be honest with you, that there is anything factory fresh about a 40-year-old car that came out of the factory 40 years ago. And you know your car far better than I do. But it isn't the way it rolled out of the factory. I mean, when we were talking on the video, I was saying I've got 225 coming out now, brake horsepower out of my car, against your 160. But of course, you won't be getting 160. You'll be lucky to be getting 120 now. Now, it's not about power output for me, but just as an example, things degrade over time. And so if what you want is a poster of a Series 2 Lotus Esprit and Championship Champagne Gold, great, then the factory car. But if you want to use it, I think you cannot use these cars, I'm afraid, today without upgrading the cooling, without putting triple fans on, without replacing things like
lights. Lights are a big one.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm caught in the dark in there, so.
Well, I tend to agree. Now, a lot of people won't even drive these in the dark. They just don't get driven. They get driven on high days and holidays on Sunday afternoons. So, the lighting isn't an issue. But if you do want to drive it in the dark, if you do want to drive in the winter, it becomes an issue because the lights are, I'm afraid, 1970s, terrible. So there are fundamental things to do with brakes, to do with suspension, to do with cooling, because this car is not well cooled for where the engine is. This was nascent sort of technology in the 70s.
More advanced one. When you look at the S1, that was.
Well, you've got to wonder. Yeah. So I mean, Colin Chapman built the S1, which we know wasn't a finished article when it came out. 2 years later, he brought out the Series 2. Now, why did he do that? It wasn't because he felt that the Series 1 was this iconic, finished, must be placed in a museum like glass thing. And then 2 years later, out came the S3. There were 27 variants of the Lotus Esprit. So that wasn't because it was brilliant when it first came out. These cars from the factory weren't the very best. Now, irrespective of that, you can turn around and say, yes, but that's the way they came. And that is definitely an argument. And there are plenty of Esprits from this era that people have, done a really good job to maintain without necessarily going through a deep restoration or modification or modernisation. I've chosen a different route because, as you say, I went to, I've been to Silverstone over the summer. I've been to Goodwood. That's a 300-mile trip, and that was got in the car, drove there, and drove back. And I hit pretty much every kind of weather system doing that, because the route the car took me was through some weird mountains, which I think were the South Downs, but and it was misty and weird, and the car was faultless through all that. And I'm taking the car to Monaco when restrictions allow, because I wish to prove that you can get in my car and drive to Monaco.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would do that if I had not updated and modernized the car.
Yeah.
In fact, I would not do that because I'm not mechanically minded. So if you have this car and you want to, your rule is you do nothing to it. The way Colin Chapman envisaged it was, and he didn't envisage the S2 to be, because it was still a work in progress.
Yeah.
Otherwise, wouldn't have had the S3. So then I get that. And most of the people that can do that are themselves mechanics.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a spanner guy.
No, I'm the same. As an owner of this car, which is a fairly stock car, I'd love to take it over to Normandy and all the beaches around there. But
Yeah.
that is a huge commitment for me and the car, and I'm like you, I'm not mechanically minded at all. I love to take a mechanic with me. I have to at the stage it's at now,
on the back seat. Yeah.
But that's sort of the price I pay for my car not having a full restoration and as being as standard as it is,
Yeah.
So it's...
And the reality is, I can genuinely, I'm not going to drive it. I choose not to drive it in snow and those sorts of conditions, but I can drive my car 12 months of the year.
Yeah.
And that was part of the requirement initially when I asked Nick at Tomorrow's Classics to do the work, and it was all about safety and reliability. It was the looks, because although the wheels, everyone's like, oh my, but the car fundamentally does not look any different. I have not done a Ghost in the Shell, which was originally an S3 turbo. Kind of thing on it. The car fundamentally, haven't taken the midline trim off it, which you could do to give it a more modern look. I've left it as it is, albeit wheels aside, because that's what I fell in love with initially. That I didn't want to change the look of the car. I wanted to change my ability to drive the car and get to places.
Yeah. I want to say as well, in the last video, I probably should have done a shot of the cars, both cars next to each other, side on, and my car, obviously the bottom sort of quarter of it should be black like your car, which may have made your car look a little bit higher than it actually is. And like you said in that video, my car is not completely standard. The S2 should have had that black quarter, and my car, as it hasn't been restored, the suspension may have sunk a little bit as well.
I think it has. And if you look at, again, factory fresh Esprit, and I see many of them when I go to Nick's, he's always got half a dozen in. The cars sit, really quite high on their suspension. There are not insignificant gaps between the wheels and the arches. Yours, I think, you're right. I think the springs have compressed over time. They're probably the originals. And therefore your car looks lower. My car looks higher because of the impression you get of the wheels being larger and the black sills. And I've got an image which really demonstrates that and shows actually that if you take an S2 and change the sill colour, you make the car look lower. So a lot of comments have been about the fact that the car, looks like it's riding much higher. And actually, we reduced the ride height. We slammed it initially, and then we raised it back up a little bit. But I do have an image as well of my car back in 2015, before I bought it, before I came across it, so unrestored, and the car after it was restored. And you can see again those two cars images in profile. The car is it's not any higher off the ground at all. But I can appreciate how people can see just from the angle of the cars and from the shadow and things, and think, well, gosh, that car looks like it's an off-roader. I think you described it. And I can see how people would think that, but the truth is, it isn't. Nothing fundamental. The rolling radius of those wheels is probably half an inch greater than the originals. So, nothing's been fundamentally altered. And of course, the car was built from the ground up. The wheels weren't put on at the end. It was built from the ground up in order to incorporate those from a ride and handling perspective. So, the adjustable Protect shocks and the springs, it was all done in concert, is my point.
So guys, as I mentioned, part 2 of this video will be coming very, very soon, and in that video we go through all of your comments that you left on the walk around video of Mark's car, and we answer them all, or he answers them all. We don't leave any out, so if you commented on it, the chances are you're going to have your comment answered by both of us, so keep an eye out for that. Like I said, this video was more of a backstory to it, to provide context, and anything he wanted to say before he answered the questions, he did. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and keep an eye out for the next one, and hopefully your questions will be answered.